Alright, so we're only 45 frames in here, and you can see everything that's going on. You see the breakup in the bottom part of the emitter here, but everything's still way too fast. So definitely to make the scale of this look even bigger, we're really going to need to animate the time scale or give it a ton of run up and sim everything really slowly. Since I don't want to sim it forever, what I'm going to do is animate the time scale from 1, and then by frame 45 I'm going to slow it down to half, so 0.5, and let's key that. And by the way, if you're working in Houdini and by default your animation curves are not linear, like if they're Bezier, I've manually gone in and set my default animation curves to be linear. So if we go into Edit, Preferences, and Animation, you can see that I've changed my default segments to linear. Otherwise you'll get a fade in and a fade off. Okay, so we've reduced the time, so everything's going to slow down and it's going to make things look that much bigger. But also our reference temperature. So the reference temperature is used to calculate the buoyancy of everything. So I want to turn this down to a third. Let's turn this down to 1,000, and then we can kind of see we're giving it more time for the turbulence to work on it and breakup to happen, all that kind of stuff. So finally, in our shape tab here, I'm going to add in some shredding, and I'm going to crank this up, and this is down by trial and error as well. We've got our shredding parameters and our block sizes and all that. Let's just see what we get by just turning on the shredding to a value of 10. We're keeping that disturbance there, and we've slowed everything down. Let's take a flipbook of this. Alright guys, so here's our flipbook, and now we can really see we're giving it time for all our disturbance settings and that to work. And we're still getting this big plume. That's alright, but you can see how we're pushing it out towards the mouth now, and all these shape settings are finally able to kind of calculate. And if you've watched any of my tutorials before, you know that I like to, we really got to get the breakup in these plumes by disturbance and shredding. And I'm not going to go too in depth on each and every parameter, but in some of my other tutorials, Houdini Effects for Beginners, I really dive in to the shape settings and how to really get the breakup from disturbance and shredding. So if you watched any of my stuff before, you'll know that I've got a couple of kind of default parameters that I go towards. And I'll do this in almost every pyro setup. So if I know my resolution block size or voxel size is 0.2, I always like to start with a disturbance value in the base block size. You see, this is at 0.2 as well. So that's going to give an overall breakup to the fluid. So I'm going to start with that. Since we're not simming a lower value than this, then we can only really go as low as this. But this is going to give it small breakup. So I want to do this in two parts. I want to give one big breakup, which I'm going to use a value of 1. That's going to break everything up nice and big. And the cutoff, where it's going to be applied to, I want to apply it to a higher value. I'm going to give it a value of 0.1. So anything below this is going to really break it up with a big block size. And then I'm going to crank up the disturbance even further. So now let's just take another flipbook of this and see really what it did. Alright, so you can see already what it's doing, and we're really getting some cooler breakup, and we're starting to break up those plumes. So that's what the big block size did. Okay, let's go back, and I always like to add a couple more things. Another disturbance. Let's add a gas disturbance and plug this into the advection. And this disturbance I want to make a really small value. So I'm going to use a strength of 20, and I don't want it in the threshold. I want this to be everywhere in the fluid. And I'm used to working in the block based because I know my voxel size is 0.2. I can push it to a maximum of 0.2 as well. So I want to keep this actually as small as I can based on the voxel size. So when I reduce the voxel size, we give it more resolution, I'm going to eventually reduce the block size as well here. But essentially this is going to break up those little bits. We'll give it a bit more roughness. That's pretty much it. So we've got a big disturbance, a small disturbance, and now the shredding. And the shredding is a parameter. It's really, really easy in Houdini to see the overuse of shredding. And when you start to see kind of plus symbols looking in your fluid, it's stretching and squashing it, and it really kind of looks unnatural. So it's just a setting you're going to have to dial in just like everything else. So in the shredding parameter, we're adding it to the flame. But before we change this, let's just let's do another flipbook of this. And one more thing I want to add is just a wind force. I want to blow it off to the side a little bit. So I'm going to blow it off in -Z, so -1. And I'm going to merge this other force in here. So this is how we kind of get different forces in here. Sorry, not a wind force, a gas wind. There we go. Throw that in there, and let's give it a direction of -1 in Y, or Z. All right, so all we've done is we've added a lot more of the small gas disturbance, and we've added a gas wind. All right, let's flipbook this. All right, so now you see we're really starting to get some breakup and more interesting looking breakup because of those disturbance settings. See right here as we're kind of chopping into that big plume, the edges there, that's the disturbance. And so at this stage it's kind of subtle, but we really need to increase the resolution of our fluid now to really see all these smaller details. So one other thing is we just kind of pull up some reference of the start of volcanoes here. There's really all sorts of things that go on. We do have ones that really get this nice plume effect, but even here you can see this little breakup here on the edges here. So that's just what I'm trying to get with these smaller settings. Here's a good example as well here. Okay, so let's just kind of keep going. I'm going to reduce or increase the resolution now to a voxel size of 0.1. And we're going to get quite a bit more heavy here. But now we can really see these details. So I increase the resolution to 0.1. I'm going to now decrease the block size to 0.1 as well. And now I'm going to decrease the shredding block size to 0.1 as well. So we're shredding and disturbing the settings to like the maximum voxel size that we can. Okay, so that's going to really greatly increase all of that. Now let's go ahead, maybe play 100 frames of this, and let's take another flipbook. And maybe I'm gonna just make sure we give it more room to see what's going on. Let's play this. All right, so we have a higher resolution flipbook here, and you can really start to see we're getting a lot of these details and the breakup. Super cool, and I like the speed and all that.